It is official. Matt Rhule is the new head coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. This is widely considered a great hire here for Nebraska, and I do agree with the consensus. Let's talk about what this means for Nebraska and their place possibly in the Big Ten moving forward. So Matt Rhule is known as a program builder, and that's exactly what Nebraska needs. The past 2 years, and even really before Scott Frost got there, Nebraska's just kind of been in a rut. They have kind of lost this program stability that I do think Matt Rhule brings in there. And why people say that is he did a phenomenal job at Temple before ending up getting the job at Baylor. At Temple, while Temple was having some very good seasons beforehand, I believe their best season was actually they were 9-4, 2-10 before actually getting the job. Before Matt Rhule got the job in 2013, where he took a then 2-10 team to 6-6, then 10-4, 10-4, 7-6, and 8-5 before ending up moving on to take over Baylor. Baylor, as we know now, has been a very successful school behind Dave Aranda, who is also a phenomenal coach. But when Matt Rhule took over, they had, in all of essence, been given the new age death sentence with everything going on with Art Briles and the allegations and everything that had happened. That school had got just decimated, and deservedly so for what their head coach at the time, Art Briles, allowed to go on at that program. Matt Rhule came in, and his first year went 1-11, and then after that turned the program around to a point where he went 8-1 in his final season with Baylor and had a chance to actually make the playoffs, which is insane when you really think about it. He took a 1-11 program to 7-6 and then 11-3. And I know that's only 3 years, and you think, oh, how can he be a program builder? Every year, his recruiting classes were better, went from 39 to 29. And then the last year, he did lose a lot of recruits after he ended up leaving and going to the Carolina Panthers to take that head coaching job. And I don't want people to think that because of what he did at Carolina means he's a bad coach. Sometimes that just doesn't work out. Nick Saban, the greatest of all time on the college level, it just did not work out on the NFL side of things. But on the college side, he has shown us he is extremely good at building programs, and I think that's what Nebraska needs right now. On top of that, he comes from a long line of coaching the offensive and the defensive lines of the ball. Did that offensive line and defensive line in college, and he was an offensive and defensive line coach in the NFL with the New York Giants. That is also something I think Nebraska needs to bring back. One of the probably more famous players of Nebraska is Ndamukong Suh. Can he bring in a player, maybe not a 5-star top talent like Suh, but can he bring in a 3 or 4-star and help develop those guys like he did at Jalen Petrie and Baylor, a guy who came in, I believe he was a 3-star, not highly regarded, ends up being a second-round pick, and he's playing fairly well in the NFL because that is what Matt Rhule does. He just brings in these players, these 3, 4-stars, and develops them. They play well, and he continues to build programs up. With Nebraska, I do think that they can get to that second rung, much like Wisconsin with Luke Fickell. Right now, as I've mentioned before, I think it's very fair to say that it's Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State are the top rung in the Big Ten. In a couple years, USC's probably going to fit in there, right there with USC and Ohio State, maybe even be right up there with Michigan. But after those, I don't think UCLA belongs in that top tier. So after that, there's a decent drop down of the schools. And I do think Nebraska can get there. And Matt Rhule, I think, can take Nebraska to the playoffs when it expands to the 12-team playoffs because everywhere he's been, they've just played solid football on the college football level. And with his ability to develop players and he's very good at recruiting as well, bringing in the guys that he wants that fit his system. I think this is going to be very good for Nebraska. You're going to have to give them a couple years. It took 2 years at Baylor. I believe it took about 2 years at Temple. So let's see where they're at 2 years, which is actually when that 12-team playoff is supposedly going to be here and opening up the world of college football, in essence, for the playoffs. I think it's a great move. They are bringing in, it looks like, former now South Carolina offensive coordinator Scott Satterfield to be their offensive coordinator. There's a lot of questions about that hire. Obviously, he's had a great 2 weeks with him being able to put up 63 on Tennessee and then goes in and that offense is able to beat Clemson. We here at Campus of Canton are a little bit skeptical of that hire, but at the end of the day, I trust Matt Rhule because of what he's been able to do at Temple and at Baylor, that this is the right move for them at this time and for this school. Personally, I think Nebraska is a good school. They've got a lot of pedigree. I don't know that they can get back to that national championship level, but I can't say they won't, because the one thing I do think Nebraska has is they have they have great, incredible fans, and ardent alumni base that I think is going to be very good for them on the NIL side. I mean, they fired Scott Frost. They could have saved, I believe it was like $8 million, and they just went ahead and fired him. It's like, we don't care about the money. They don't care. Nebraska wants to get back to winning. I think bringing in a guy like Matt Rhule is going to get them there quicker than probably they think. And as long as they can be a little bit patient, I think Matt Rhule is going to have Nebraska humming toward that top of the tier 2 in the Big Ten, maybe even challenges some of those top tier teams in the Big Ten in a couple seasons. Guys, if you like this kind of content, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn that bell icon on. We've had a ton of coaching changes. We're dropping videos on all those. The transfer portal is already going crazy with upwards of 15 top offensive players going in. And there's more to come, as the transfer portal doesn't even technically open up until December 5th. We'll be talking about all this stuff, all kinds of videos dropping. So make sure to turn that bell icon on so you do not miss a video. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Have yourselves a great day.